You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional coach and matchmaker. Oh my gosh, the Love Club has started. There are 22 people in a 6-month intimacy accelerator, which is including peer-to-peer matchmaking, relationship education, and accountability to one's love goals. We started this journey. Oh my God, the people are absolutely amazing. They're ranging in age from 30 to 87 years old. And, the group is getting along so well. They are biohackers, mental health experts, dancers, musicians, a eclectic group. Most of them are based in Los Angeles, although we do have some people in Austin, Texas, and Miami, and Arizona, and Boulder. I am figuring out how to do a rolling cohort because now we have a wait list of people who are interested in joining the Love Club, and I will let you know once that is available. However, if maybe you're currently single and want to connect with somebody within the Love Club, that is available. I get involved in some of the matchmaking processes, and we also include some facilitated dating experiences. This is not like any matchmaking experience. I, for one, have been sent these PDFs with images and like a resume of like, here's this guy, I think that you should meet him. And I just look at the paper and I feel like the paper, when I see a man put on paper, it just, I don't know, I just feel dry in that experience. I'm like, no, I don't. It's hard to get excited over a man on a piece of paper. So I will never, at the Love Club, we never put anybody on a piece of paper like that. We're happy to share about them with you specifically. And I call, like when I do matchmaking, it's more of an intuitive, it's an intuitive feeling that I instinctively feel when I'm out in the world and I have these people in my brain. They're essentially camping out in my mind. And I, have collected information about who they are. There's a human design reading. We also do a comprehensive intake call, and we're aligning on relationship education together. And I'm collecting these data points in my head about these particular people who I'm matchmaking for. And then I distill that information, into my head. I drop it into my heart. And then it's like, it's in my gut. And as I'm out in the world and I'm instinctual, like, I think you should meet this person or you should meet that person. And it doesn't even necessarily, it's not that I'm like, oh my God, that might be the one for them. It's that I feel as though this person and this person would have an experience together that would teach them something about, there would be some growth. Like one of the principles in the Love Club is no attachment to outcome, growth comes first. So if you are interested in the Love Club, I am in this description of this podcast will include a link for you to check more out about that and know that rolling registration is coming soon. Also, you'll see on the calendar when you go to wedeepen.com, the social calendar, the upcoming social and transformational experiences. I've chosen them, curated these experiences, woven them together with intention of helping you have a more meaningful, loving, relational life. That's whether you're currently single or you're in relationship. And one of those experiences coming up, Kimmy Inch hosts a 4-day immersion into, it's like a kink classroom. A lot of our sex ed programs in school there's not much there. This goes really deep into the erotic realm. It's 4 days. It's called Something More. It's happening February 5th through the 8th and February 11th through the 15th here in Austin, Texas. I did the program back in October. You learn shibari rope tying, flogging, how to, more practices in the erotic realm, also the erotic blueprints, phenomenal experience. Highly recommend you check that out. As well as I just had a conversation with Allie, who runs a dating experience called The Feels. They're launching in Los Angeles on January 31st. I'm going to be sharing more about that. And Feminine Weapon Day. January 30th is the 10th annual Feminine Weapon Day. If you're in Los Angeles, that experience is being put together right now. 100% of the proceeds go to children of abuse, extreme poverty, and human trafficking. Bunch of women unite. We invite men to come into the experience. It's a concert. It's, I would say like not a gala, like a foo-foo type, put on your fancy gown gala, but more of coming in and having a deep experience that's profound, that is actually inspiring change, inspiring to end the cycle of abuse. And a lot of that abuse is coming from sexual abuse. And as we have better relationships as grown-ups, we can take that information that we're learning and bring it to the kids now through our transformation healing program. So that's what Feminine Weapon Day is doing, is raising funding for that. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate it, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it, helps more people then come into the ethers and discover all of the experiences that we're weaving together. We also have a ton of WhatsApp groups. So if you want to know what's happening in your city, specifically Austin, Los Angeles, Miami, New York City, Chicago, we have a WhatsApp group for each of those. I'll put those links in the description as well. So today I'm in Austin. It's raining outside and I'm in my new home, and I have a new friend, Whitney, with me. Whitney is the founder of ATMA. When I first arrived in Austin, I was like learning, tapping into like what's happening in the social scene here. And ATMA was top. It was like top of the list. And they have been bringing people together to have healing experiences. Sometimes there's, experiences that include medicine work, which we'll go into today. And others are more community oriented, music, fun, play. And it's credible what she's built. And the people that I've met through ATMA. So happy to have you and on this podcast today, Whitney. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina. It's so special to be here with you and to be able to share about our project and what we're building, our community. So thank you for inviting me. And I look so forward to learning more about you too while we're here today together. So.
Yeah, all my podcasts, it's, when I have guests come in, I'm like, this is not an interview. This is a conversation. And we get to invite people to have this, to join us into the conversation. You can ask me questions. I ask you questions. We just banter back and forth. So when you say that this community and what you're building, like what is the community and what are you building?
Yes. So ATMA, All Tribes Medicine Assembly. We began 2 years ago here in Austin, and we are a sacred medicine church and community gathering space. And yeah, so I started the church because of my knowing that it is our birthright to utilize sacred plant and earth medicines for our healing and to connect more deeply with our own hearts and with the divine. And so we started the church in order to give ourselves a layer of protection for that. And the other main reason is so we could gather together and celebrate this magical gift of being alive and connect to the divine, to point our focus and attention on source and source energy, and to pull more of that through and to reflect the goodness of each other to one another, and to remind each other of how good we are, how God we are, how alive we are, how special it is to be embodied in this time and space now. And so, when I moved to Austin, I was looking for that community, and there were some things going on, but nothing like what I felt I was looking for or that was needed. And so I just decided to call us together.
I went to this party at your place, the ranch where ATMA is housed there. And that was such a fun experience. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. I got this invitation from Whitney. She's like, come, there's going to be, motivational speakers and scientists and people from NASA and just these amazing people. And we're going to do this ceremony. And I was like, okay, cool. Sure. I'll come. And I did. And you orchestrate it. Like, what a phenomenal event. Like these events are next level. First, the venue is, the ranch is gorgeous. Second is, one of your friends, Sarah Solstice, this beautiful Barbie, so fucking talented, gets up and performs in the most playful, fun way that we were all jamming and dancing. Prior to her performing, somebody was doing breath work, and I remember we were invited into like breath work, and I just told the guy, I was like, by the way, I don't really like breath work. And he's like, that's okay. It's okay. It's kind of like, I was like, who am I to go to somebody who's about to like share their medicine and be like, I don't like your medicine. I loved the breath work. It was to music and sound, and the whole experience was incredible. And then there was this like presentation. All of a sudden my face is up there, and I realized, I'm like, wait, am I the speaker? Like, am I part of this thing? It was so fun. And you shared there your experience of how you got into working with medicine. And I'd love for you to tell that story.
Yes, I'd love to share that. First, I'll speak on the event that we hosted. And so one of the visions of ATMA was to have a place, like a beautiful sacred sanctuary where we could call in the masters to share their medicine with us. And so we do host the best of the best in the world. And so Sarah Solstice is one of my dearest sister. We've been friends for 20 years. And it's, she was... she's really pulling through a source. She has direct channel, open channel. And, the performance hard to put into words. So it's like, we can kind of express with our excitement how special that was, but you have to really be there to experience it because you can't really describe it. And then Dustin Alexander, who leads Breathing into the Void. He was formerly a musician. So he does this really beautiful pairing of the music and the breath work together, especially curated for those events. So yeah, I'm glad that you got to experience that firsthand. So the way that I share what I shared that night is really how my awakening path began. People always are asking me, how did you get on this path of medicine and or awakening? Where did it begin? And I always just share that my pain is what brought me here on this path. It's my own pain led me here, and it began. When I was younger, it was a whole different world. I had a pretty good childhood upbringing. But I was brought up Christian. I was brought up Southern Baptist, my mom, and really kind of religion kind of forced down my throat. And so I rebelled against that. My dad was atheist and my mom was Southern Baptist, but they were still together. And so she would force me to go to church. And in church, they were teaching me that, my dad's going to hell because he doesn't believe in the ways that they believe. And so it was really torturous as a child thinking, I was like, my dad's a good guy. Like, what is this? And so it was really difficult, the religious thing. So, I really kind of rebelled against my religion. And, I said I would never step foot in a church and kind of like, screw God. I don't even want to use the term God because it was such a turnoff for me. And I really kind of started doing a lot of drugs at a really young age and going down a kind of a dark path in that, just wanting to alter, was not comfortable with who I was or didn't really understand what my purpose was. And so I went really down a dark road, and I had a few near-death experiences from drug overdose. And on the the fourth one, I had a hospitalized drug overdose where I flatlined for 30 seconds and kind of just woke up in the ICU. I had, tubes out of my nose, and my left lung had collapsed. I had a tube coming out of my side, and I was just, was confused. And I didn't have quite like the white light experience. I didn't have experience like that. But what did happen is when I got out of the hospital, I started to notice shifts. I started to notice that prior to this near-death experience, I hated my life. I hated other people. I just was not content in the world. After the near-death experience, I started to notice synchronicities. I started to, think of someone and they would call. I just more so than I had ever noticed before, but they were happening a lot. And I also noticed that I had like this deep love for myself and for others, which was a huge contrast before. And so right after that, I got this job and I was working and I met Sarah. She was working there too. And she was really tapped in even back then. This was 20 years ago. And she started coined her my awakening guide, because I was not understanding what was going on. It was so foreign that I felt good about life. I felt, I felt, all these synchronicities, but she started to explain to me about God, about oneness, about love, about manifestation, about vibration, about all of these quantum physics and all of these types of things. And so I really, she's been my angel for this whole time. And she would start singing these songs to me. And I remember there's this one lyric in one of her songs. It says, "Nighttime darkness holds all your dreams, and all of your hardships aren't what they seem. They're guiding you, they're leading you to all of the most profound, never heard about places." And so I just feel like that rings so true, because it's like our darkest moments are there for us on purpose. And so, but she became my awakening guide, and we, became friends. And, fast forward, that's really when my awakening began. And I like to share that because the near-death experience that I got to experience, the medicines I work with now, which I'll share more about the road of how I got there too. But, specifically Bufo, the medicine that I facilitate the most, it's the medicine that I work with the most. It really mimics that near-death experience. So after you go through a Bufo experience, it's much like what I described post near-death experience. You start to feel this deep love and interconnectedness with everything. And you also start to notice these synchronicities that are just popping off left and right. Like you have, let go of a lot during your process and raised your vibration. And so you're more in alignment with the true reality of heaven that we are actually in. And so, yeah, that's a comparison. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience that near death experience, the real true one, because it's a great way for me to be able to describe the post Bufo experience.
Quick question. So what drugs were you using prior, and why?
So I was just, I was just like the black sheep of my family, which I think many people can relate with, that, that I work with sometimes. But like I said, I had a really good upbringing. I had great parents. I had, I was pretty much an only child. I had a half brother and half sister that were older. I was the only child in the house. So I was a pretty spoiled child. But I didn't have any kind of heavy trauma as a child that I can understand why I went that route with drugs. I just wasn't content. When I got to high school, I started to feel like I didn't really belong in any of the groups. I wasn't into cheerleading. I wasn't into, the kind of, books and, the kind of the, really smart crowd as far as that goes. I was more just I just didn't know where I belonged. And so that caused great discomfort for me. And so I was trying to escape from that feeling, I believe, is why I started that. And curiosity. I just was kind of always, and still am, driven by adrenaline and thrills and things like that. And I found that from that. So, I started using, initially we were using Xanax and kind of pills that we would find. But then moving into using cocaine when I was very young, and that led to crack addiction. So I was smoking crack and really going down a really dark path with that for a short time. And then MDMA was really a saver for me, because had it not been for MDMA, and this was not MDMA therapy, this was recreational use of MDMA, but it was such a powerful tool to help me get off of crack, that I really am appreciative of that medicine. Although I did become, I got to where I was overusing that too. However, it was like you traded one addiction for another. I went from, doing the cocaine to doing the crack, thankfully finding MDMA. And then the medicine, or the drug that I actually OD'd on that last time was GHB. And so, but I was basically just doing anything I could find at that time. It was just, it was really wild how much I was trying to escape my reality. Yeah. And so, those drugs, were such destructive. It was so hard for my family. It was so hard for, it was a really difficult time. So thank goodness for the near-death experience and the overdose. But fast forward, so after that, I started to kind of drop those addictions, and they slowly started to fall away. And I started to trade those addictions for movement, for athletics. So I became an endurance athlete. After that. And so I started to do, competitive endurance athletics, and I was doing, Ironman type, races. I did a half Ironman. I've done, marathons all over the world. I did a marathon in Antarctica, which is, pretty cool. And so that was the path I started to go down, and really focused on my health and nutrition. But then it was still a hole I was trying to fill, to a certain extent. I was filling it with, in a positive way. So it was different feeling than the drug addiction, but I was still searching spiritually. And so, I'd gotten into this relationship that had gone wrong. And as you can imagine, and have probably felt, like heartbreak happened, and heartbreak is some of the worst pain that you can feel. And so when I was going through that is when I really started to turn to look for something. And I started my plant medicine journey at that time. And so I had done mushrooms recreational when I was younger, but never with any kind of an intention. So I had some experiences with mushrooms that were really profound, and then moved into working with ayahuasca, sitting in ceremony with ayahuasca, which was beautiful. Worked with that medicine for a few years, and then I discovered Bufo. And Bufo is the medicine that cracked me wide open and really, really opened my heart and my awareness to who I was. And I had no idea what I was in for when I stepped into that Bufo ceremony. But when I sat in that ceremony, I knew that everything in my life had led up to that moment of awakening. And I understood in that moment who I was, why everything in my life had happened. I was on my knees thanking the addiction, thanking some of the sexual trauma, thanking every single hard thing that had happened in my life, because I was shown in that Bufo ceremony why it happened and how it was helping me to build the character and compassion and capacity for resilience that I needed in order to fulfill my role that I was sent here to do on this planet.
Wow, what a fascinating journey that you have been on. Bufo, is that 5-MeO? The same thing. Okay. I just had my first Bufo ceremony, probably about, 4 months or so ago, but I've done a lot of work with ayahuasca. I've sat probably about 20 ceremonies with ayahuasca. The first one was in 2015. And that medicine, has been like a gift in my life. and it's interesting when we think of the dark experiences that we have had, and mine. I remember at 18, I was laying in my bed. I dislocated my elbow and was healing from that. And I had a boyfriend that I loved at the time. And I remember saying to God, like, if I was to die right now, I'd be so happy. Like, I'm so content with my life. Like, everything is great. Like, can't believe I've lived this long. And it's like, I was 18, like, it's been so amazing. And I was just like, felt this like overwhelming sense of joy. And I remember in that moment, I like had this vision of faking my funeral. And I wanted to see what people would say about me. Like, I wanted to be present for that funeral experience. And I had experienced, by the time of 18, I wouldn't say a full handful, but I've had I had experienced lots of death. I had been to funerals before. And so I made this decision in that moment that I was going to live my life where I would be able to hear what people would say about me as I lived. Like, I would just live my life in a way that, okay, I can't be at the funeral. I can't fake the funeral. So I'm just going to do what I want, like be the person that I want to be represented in my death. And I also in my 20s was like, I didn't have, like, I would switch careers every little bit. Every few years, I had some insecurity around that. But at that time, I was in my 20s in like the early 2000s, and nobody talked about anxiety or depression. Those just weren't topics. And I don't think that we were necessarily neglecting to talk about to some of the extent. Maybe it was just out of our awareness, but I didn't even know that maybe there's times when I was experiencing insecurity that it was anxiety underneath of that. And then once my greatest hardships happened when I ventured out and I left corporate America. Like, I left a salary job, and all of a sudden I was not quite sure about my reality. Like, I felt like at times I had this like dark secret around, like, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't want to. There was a time I had a 401k and some credit card debt. I had $20,000 in credit card debt at that time. I grew up to $40,000 at one point, but I had $20,000 in credit card debt, and I had like $20,000 in a 401k. And you could go to Google and ask Google, should you cash out your 401k or not? Which I did. But they don't have the right. They can't tell you what you should do with your 401k or what you're aiming to dream up in your life. And I didn't want to go to my parents because they'd already supported me and helped me a little bit along the way. And I didn't want them to worry about me. I didn't want to tell my friends that I was financially challenged because I lived in New York City. I didn't want to not be invited to go out or them to like feel bad for me. So that was like the darkest places. And I also was playing the game of, they say, if you like follow your passion and the money will come. And so I played that for years. I was like, they said that if I followed my passion, the money will come. I think that there's more to that story than just follow your passion and the money will come. I think there's definitely more to it. And also, you're going to get these dark experiences this lifetime because that's where you learn. That's where we grow in those spaces. That's where epiphany happens. If we're just, traveling through the light, which we get these moments of light, but then the hardship will arrive. And I personally have been feeling a little of, my ayahuasca experience and my Bufo experience, because there is that you have to surrender and you have to let go. And just in the past couple of mornings, I've been experiencing vertigo, and that's scary when everything is spinning. I got sick. When I say got sick, I vomited, in my dizziness twice. And I keep thinking, like, I definitely go back to, okay, if you've survived, if you went through, you know, a 5-MeO ceremony, it's just like that, just surrender to the dizziness. But I'm also in a fairly new relationship, and I have to rely on him to take care of me. And that was like an edge. And I have to think of, you know, oh, this is interesting that you're giving me this. Like, I'm one who prides myself when I never get sick. And now I'm feeling off-centered, and I'm like looking at him like, don't see me as weak. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, surrender to his care, and you have this, and thank God you're at his place sleeping tonight. Because if I was at home by myself, I would have been pretty shooken up and nervous about what to do. So it's interesting, like these medicine ceremonies, how they prepare us for different things that have happened in our life, come in like ways that you don't imagine or you can't expect to happen. And I keep thinking too, as I'm having this vertigo experience, like everybody who has gotten sick and the people around you. I mean, the hardest thing I think is we look at ourselves as strong human beings, and then we're actually so vulnerable. And it's reminding me of the vulnerability of each of us. And again, being in those ceremonies, if you sat in a ceremony room, I is probably one of my favorites, because I tend to not be I tend to not, one of the reasons in ceremonial circles, sometimes like, I don't really want to socialize while I'm on medicines. I think there's because I do rely on my intellect a lot. Like I like having deep discussions and conversations, and sometimes the ceremonies will take that. You know, in an ayahuasca ceremony, nobody's talking. You're each in your own spaces, and you're you're in your own journey. I like that space more than the whole collective. But they're all preparing us for something that we may not even know. I think sometimes people are like, why would I do a ceremony like that? But you don't, if it presents itself to you, there's a calling to it. And if you're open to it, so much can transform and change. And then one other thing that, Whitney, I think this would be interesting for you to comment. I've heard from people who have struggled with addiction that there's a fear of then going into medicine ceremony, because that's like why do I have to go to another substance? Like I'm going from one substance to another substance. And so there's a lot of resistance, while at the same time, I do know that there's like one of the things, Iboga, I had my first Iboga ceremony back in April. And that's one of the medicines that oftentimes people with addictions, they're like, do Iboga, it'll help you move past that.
Yeah, I believe you had that Iboga ceremony at ATMA.
I did.
Yeah. So, I can definitely comment on that because, because of my history with the drug addiction, when I began my path with facilitation, I started to focus on drug addiction clients specifically because of my past. I really resonated and understood what they were going through. So I focused a lot of my attention on treatment of drug addiction clients. And it was so beautiful. And so certainly, I understand the concern, especially there's a lot of, resistance in the recovery world with the utilization of medicines because of the fear of just trading the addiction. So with AA, they kind of frown upon it, even though Bill, used psychedelics himself but it's kind of hush hush. However, now, because so many people are having success with dropping their addictions after going through these plant medicine ceremonies and animal medicine ceremonies, the world's starting to open up. Even in the recovery, people are becoming a little bit more open to it because, once you have someone who's really struggling that's sitting next to you in AA, then they go through one of these ceremonies and then they're released from that struggle, then people can't deny that. They're like, okay, well, maybe there is something to this. But there's a really big difference. Intention is such a big deal, intent. And so, the intent of going into these ceremonies to drop the addiction, to really going in with a, intention to use this as medicine in order to help address the problem, and not the addiction problem, but really the underlying problem to the addiction. Right. And, I can just share that, I've dealt a lot with many different people who've had major addictions, but there's one gentleman in particular who I love to share about, because he was a heroin addict for 15 years. He was using heroin every day. He had been to rehab 50 times, 50 times, and he was only 30, so he was using it since he was like 15. He was living on the street and in trap houses. And somebody sent him to me, and he was like, if you can help this kid, then there's, it's going to make a huge impact in the recovery world in Austin because of the extreme case that, we were dealing with. And so I said, let's do it. If he's wanting help, let's bring him in. And so the young man's name is Mark, and he came to sit in ceremony, and Sarah and I were both leading that ceremony. And Mark came in, and he was a cute kid. I was expecting some gnarly, like really beat up looking guy. And he wasn't. He was, he came in, and he said, hi, I'm Mark. I'm a heroin addict. Yeah, I'm ready for help. He sat in one session with us, and he had a pretty extreme response to the medicine. He inhaled the medicine, and he went into like I would say an exorcism type of release with the medicine. He went completely out of body. He was shaking. He was, had the eyes, rapid eye movement, and, really shaking. He had a lot of stuck energy in his body. But when he shook out of it, he said, I've been an atheist my entire life. He said, I know what God is now. And he said, I'm done. And that was 3 years ago. And now Mark is married. He's got one beautiful little girl, one on the way. He's driving a car nicer than mine. I always like to joke, and he's just thriving at life. And so to see, that's a real story. You can see his before and after. You can talk to him. You can share. He likes to share his story. And that's just one story. I've served hundreds of ceremonies, and I've seen so many lives turned around by this medicine that it is just, if someone is dealing with an addiction they cannot shake, then, I would encourage to consider this as an alternative method to help move beyond that. And I think once you sit with the medicines, or you become more aware and familiarized with them, you can see that these are not recreation. It's not so fun going through some of these processes. Sometimes they can really jar you and shake you and help you to wake up. It's not always like a fun recreational type experience. It's more of a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call, and it allows you to see yourself from a greater vantage point, and allows you to see yourself beyond the concept of who you think you are, because what we call an ego death occurs, and you get to see what is there beyond the ego. You get to have a glimpse into that which you always have access to, your soul, the oneness, allness, love, God. And once you see that, you can never not know it. Mm-hmm.
There's as the medicine, it's interesting to use the word trend. Is it trends? There's probably a better word for that, but it becomes more popular, and people have a greater awareness around it. They're using it for all types of things, from healing addiction, from healing heartbreak. And I'm also seeing that there is couples who are doing ceremony together, whether that's in a group sitting or whether that's in a solo one-on-one with a practitioner, or even just by themselves. They're incorporating that practice into their relationship. I'm curious if how you've seen potentially couples come closer together, or even just, I don't think that's necessarily always like the goal of a couple to come closer together. Sometimes it's like a realization that we're actually not meant to be together and we've been trying this for so long. But are you seeing that? Are you seeing couples coming and of how it's being supportive of people in their romantic lives as well?
So the medicine helps you to create a better relationship with yourself. And when you have a better relationship with yourself, you can have a better relationship with your partner. You know, it kind of opens you up and humbles you and shows you areas where you can be an asshole. It shows you, it shows you where you can, be out of integrity. It opens you to an awareness, greater awareness about yourself. One of my intentions going into the medicine was always show me what I need to be aware of, because when we become more self-aware, then we can move and act differently in the world. And so whenever you have this awareness about yourself, then you can, interact differently with your partner. And so I have seen many relationships be served by one or both partners going through the medicine experience, because of this. Because I've seen, I've had reports where the other partner says, I can see an extreme difference in my partner. They're softer, they're more loving, they're more open, more considerate. And, that's going to improve any relationship to have those qualities. Those qualities, happen after going through the experience. And so, it can be a great tool. And it's something that, I have considered creating a protocol around to do, specifically work with couples, because, there's some people who are really, really working to improve their relationships. And I do know that incorporating this with a specific protocol would help them, but it's not fully developed yet, but it's something that's in the works.
So there's all types of medicines now. It's like there's a whole smorgasbord of it's like ketamine, 5-MeO, which is also known as bufo, ayahuasca, ibogaine, I believe, ibogaine. How does somebody know like which is right for them? And when, do you say like, oh, if you're experiencing this, you should go do this medicine. Or if you're doing this, you should do this. And I said just a few of them now, like peyote and MDMA. They're also coming to mind. Chuma, yes. There's mushrooms. A lot of them. How does somebody know where to begin?
So, mushrooms are typically one of the best entry points, because they're so more commonly talked about. Psilocybin, microdosing to macrodosing. Many people start there, but there are some different recommendations that can be made. We're actually doing, for anyone in the Austin area, on Monday, we're going to start hosting an info panel about psychedelics, a Q&A and discussion panel. That's going to be at VUCA on Monday, this coming Monday. No, this Monday, and then we'll be doing it once a month, but it's myself, it's Zach Leary, who is Timothy Leary's son. We've got Olivia and JJ, who are also on the panel of medicine facilitators. And so we're just going to come together to help educate the community and talk about these types of things. But I would say, many times people, they start with psilocybin or possibly MDMA, and then, kind of move into the more deeper medicines, ayahuasca, wachuma, I work, and then bufo. Bufo is really one of the most, it's the strongest entheogen on the planet. And so it's kind of, some people, they skip through it and they're just called straight to bufo. So it's really when we're going to have when I have someone new that's going to work with medicine, we have an intake process and we sit down and we have a discussion about what medicine would really resonate with them based on what they're going through. If it's someone who is dealing with some heavy trauma, like, drug addiction, then, psilocybin would not be what I recommend. That's not, they probably had those experiences recreational. If it's some, a PTSD veteran which I transitioned from working with drug addiction clients, and then I started transitioning to working with veterans with PTSD, and it's it's been incredible working with these men and women. But with these guys, we have a specific protocol that I created and work with them on. And then sometimes it's for people who aren't dealing with any of those traumas. It's this medicine is used for the betterment of the well. So it's like deepening your spiritual understanding, developing a relationship with God. And so we can guide and direct you, but it's really based on individual basis.
Yeah. So ayahuasca was my first medicine. Mentioned before, I did that one about 20 times, and it was such a gift because during the entrepreneur journey, I was with a dear friend as she was coming to serving the medicine, and I was with her through this 3-year journey that she went through, and then right as she began serving the medicine is the first time that I was sat in the ceremony. And I say it was such a gift because at that time she knew that I was in this entrepreneur journey, and she said, just come sit. And so it was a gift over and over. And each time, the first ceremonies, I grew up in Maryland, and I was living in New York City. I lived in New York City for 12 years, and I would, feel some type of like guilt around not being with my parents as they were aging. And each ceremony there would be, it's almost like I would mourn their passing. I was like pre-mourning their death. And then I was getting more to know myself throughout that process. One of the last ceremonies I did around my 40th birthday was, I just kept like seeing my whole life play out and how it's been this deep journey to love, and how just have this beautiful capacity to love. And I just had my journal and was just writing. And then the last ceremony, actually, so I did Bufo after Iboga. So then I did Iboga at ATMA. That ceremony, so they structured that one where we did ayahuasca, and then the next night started the Iboga, and the Iboga lasts for 36 hours. So it was Thursday night you do Iboga that takes you through Friday night, and then Saturday night we did an ayahuasca ceremony and closed it with. And it's interesting to reflect back into that journey because I was dating the man who I'm now in relationship with, and and we were dating, and he was dating other people, I was dating other people, and in the Iboga ceremony, he was coming on so strong, like it was just so much about him and I and our connection. At one point, I went back, and he has 2 children at one time. I went back and I birthed his kids, and I was the one who was with him, and then we spent the future together. And then the next night, the ayahuasca night, I was like, I need to clear that. And so I did ayahuasca, and I actually had a date scheduled for that night after. Who does that? You don't need to schedule your dates for the night after you end an ayahuasca ceremony. But I had one scheduled for that. I had postponed it because when the ceremony came up, and I'm like, we're going to go out on Sunday night. So come out of this whole ceremony thing. And the aya was, and I think a lot of people feel this in dating. We just want to be done with it. Can I just finally meet him? Can we just check this off the box and move on? And I came out. So I had this date the next night, and I go into the ayahuasca ceremony, and I'm like, I got to shake off the other guy because he's not really available, and it's just not happening right now. And so this other guy came through, and the medicine was like, yeah, just and granted, it's funny because we have to forget that our mind is also part of the medicine ceremony process. And our mind comes still with all its layers of conditioning and desires and wanting, and it's multi-level experience. And sometimes you can come out of a ceremony and you'll go through the integration process, but integration can be much more than a week. You still can look back at a medicine ceremony that you did 6 months ago and have a new insight or reflection around what that experience was. So I come out of that and I'm like, this other guy's the one. And let me just tell him. So I went on the date that night and I was like, hey, I'm just going to make this easy for us. We're going to get married. Yes. Yeah. As I was going out that evening, I was telling my friends, I was like, I'm just going to tell him. And they're like, Christina, I don't know if you should do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to. And I did. In the beginning of the date, I was like, by the way, yeah, we're just going to get married. So I'm just going to make it easier. So tell me all about your life. Like, who are you? And he did, and he shared. And then I remember at one point, kind of like my body wasn't like my smell wasn't taking him in. I was like, I'm not feeling that. And then I left and I was like, I don't think he's the one. But I had to laugh at it's like such a funny experience because sometimes they say tragedy plus time equals comedy. There's no tragedy in this moment of the story that I'm telling, but like tragedy plus time equals comedy. And if you zoom out, you can look down at humans and you can be like, look at these funny little creatures. And I look back at that experience. I'm like, you are so funny. Like that you just went on this date and I'm like, and then you left the date and you're like, nah, I don't think so. Not anymore. But it's funny to now reflect back on that months later and now being in relationship with the person who I was trying to clear out to be like, I just need to, it was sort of like the other guy I was going on a date was like this Band-Aid because I was like, this situation isn't available right now. So I just need to move through some energy and just shift it. And then a month or so later, I did a Bufo ceremony for the first time. It's the only Bufo ceremony I did. And that experience was more of me coming into myself. And I could say that the experience that I had with you at your space that we talked about in the beginning of this really amazing party with Sarah Solstice and the ceremony there at the ranch, it led perfectly up to that moment because the Bufo ceremony, I was letting go of my own identity and then coming into myself. I've kind of been this person who, I've navigated feelings of jealousy and insecurity in relationship by being, if I was dead, I'm just going to die anyway. So who cares if they're connecting with this other person or who cares if they're having an experience with somebody else and they're enjoying somebody else? I'm not going to get jealous because I'm going to die. And a little of that is, okay, that's great, Christina. You get it. But also there's a little of that is coping. There's a coping aspect to that experience because you're not owning you. And so my going through the Bufo was about owning me. And I did three, I don't know if you call it 3 hits, 3 sittings in the same sitting. So 3 times I went in. The first time I went in and you really surrender to it. You release and you have to let go completely. And I remember just letting go of my identity altogether. Okay, I'm gone. And then I came back and I did a second ceremony. And after I did the second one, it was a light one. I think the pipe popped. So it was a very light one. And then I was doing the ceremony at a house in Los Angeles. And it wasn't my medicine woman's house. It was a therapist's house, and the therapist wasn't there, but it was a beautiful space. And I walked through the house and I kept looking at pictures of her and being like, I'm not her. I'm not a therapist. And just repeating what I am not. And then I did the next sitting and excuse me. And I came out of it and I'm like, I am Christina Weber. I am Christina Weber. And it was just this owning of myself that I hadn't, like, it's kind of coming into, I think that there's a process of even coming into our own being and accepting our own being. And we go through the letting go of like, I'm not that, I'm not this, and I'm nobody, and this, to then like, and then owning it. And then we own it again. And then it's this cycle, because then it's like, then after you own it, then you release it. And that's what the Bufo ceremony for me was. And I can look back in all these, the ayahuasca ceremonies and the iboga ceremonies and the Bufo ceremonies, and they are processes of coming more into myself and getting to know more about me and having those experiences as catalyst for that.
Thank you for sharing that. So true. It's so true. It helps us to realize who we are, right? It helps us to recognize the brilliance of our own being. I know for myself, when I went through, I spent a lot of time, just kind of not loving myself, right? Not loving the way I looked, not loving, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not pretty enough, and my hair's not long enough, like all of these things, my whole life. And then, I know coming out of the Bufo experience, looking at my hand and just being like, oh, thank you, body, for holding me and for how magical and brilliant you are. And just feeling like for the first time, like, after my near-death experience, I felt self-love, but not the same way. Like coming out of the Bufo experience and seeing my feet and appreciating just every part of my body in a way that I had never experienced before. It's kind of the same thing. It's just, recognizing the beauty and that we are, and to be able to, step forward embodied in this way with this awareness and this love and appreciation for self. It's just you presenting yourself differently in the world. And it's, it's just so beautiful to experience and to be able to share that with others. So, yeah.
So we're going into 2024. What is in store for ATMA? Like, what are you going to create in this next new year and beyond?
So, we've talked a lot about the medicines, and we talked a little bit about the Sarah Solstice event, but truly, we're becoming aware that the medicines are helpful to help open us to awareness of who we are, but we are actually the medicine. And that's a realization that many people are coming to. It's like, we're using these as tools, and that's what they are. But at some point we get to drop the medicine and we get to come together. So my main mission on this planet is to call us together. I dealt with a lot of loneliness on my path. I've always really, felt kind of alone and like a black sheep of my family, and then in high school not fitting in. And I think that served me in such a great way, because that loneliness created the fire and desire within me to call together the tribe and the community. And so that's what we're doing here. And, we have a beautiful ranch right now out in here in Austin. But we are looking at larger properties and other communities that we're aligned with to come together and, do this in a greater, bigger way. When we come together, when we open our hearts and we're vibrating at this high frequency, and then we join together with others who are also vibrating at this higher frequency, there's a ripple effect that happens out into the world, and we can stand here with open arms ready for those in the world as lighthouses. So when others are ready, when their hearts are open and they're ready to come together, we're there to welcome them for a safe and loving place for them to come, so that no one has to feel alone. We all have these magical gifts, and we can come together and pool our gifts and our resources and truly thrive at living. The vision is to have a large communal property, and to be free on that land, free to be in our naked state if we want to, free to be, just free to be. And that's what we'll be doing.
I love that we are the medicine. We are the medicine. Last question for you. How has your perception of money changed through using medicine and also doing the work that you're doing and building community as well?
Thank you. That's a beautiful question. And I always like to share with people, I'm very much on my healing path too. So I'm very much a student at life. And, these medicines are always teaching me things. And, finances have always been kind of a tricky thing. Having a lack mindset, I've dealt with these things. And I think they're a great gift because I think that many people deal with that. And what the medicines show me when I do the medicines, because sometimes I can get in a tailspin now. I can get off in my mind and out of my heart, and I can start to think about, not having enough, or, what if I want to do this and I don't have enough to do it? It's like what happens when you go into the medicine is I can be in nature and have an experience. The medicines just show me, like, I look at the ground and I look at the trees and I look at the sky and I feel my breath, and money is not even real. We have everything we need right in our heart, and it's like becomes like a non-issue, and it's our vibration is the new rich. Like if you are vibrating at a high frequency, then the people that you need to meet come into your field. The resources that you need come into your field. It's not about having a stack of money piled up, because it's just not about that. The resources and the abundance come in many different ways. And so it's learning to transition from that old mindset of like, I need to have X amount of dollars in the bank, or I need to have, this really fancy car. No, it's about having how much joy can you have in your daily experience, because that is and how much gratitude can you hold in your heart, because that is the true measure of success, and it will help you to call in all. Like I love that Dr. Joe says gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership, because when you can be in that high vibrational state, joy and gratitude, everything comes. You are a magnet to everything that you need and desire, and so that's my answer for that.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you. It's even too, it's like we get in these, like I don't have enough money to do the things that I want to do. But really what is underneath of that you really want to do is, I love the being out in nature and out in the world and just feeling the ground beneath it. Like if you don't have it and you don't have this lavish experience, you're not going to die. You don't need it. No. And you get to recreate it with your creativity in so many different ways. I think even the false misconception in dating, people think that they have to have a bunch of money to date, or that need to be in a right financial place to start a relationship. And I think what's even more interesting is your creativity. Like, what are you going to bring to it, and how are you going to play? Because really underneath it, we just want to play, and you can play in like a really lavish experience, or you can play in, a really rough, like dirt. Yeah, you can play in the dirt, and both can be so much fun, and you can feel the same in each of those experiences. Thank you so much, Whitney, for this conversation and for just being a beacon of light and leadership here in the Austin community. And beyond that, I know that you spend time in Florida, in St. Peter's, and do the back and forth. And it's beautiful to, I admired you from afar, and now inviting you in for this conversation and just seeing that dance that you're doing, and those eyes that you have on what's happening is very beautiful, and all the connections that you're making for yourself and for people, bringing us all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And I think I just want to share, and in closing here, that, I've dedicated my life to serving the community and serving these medicines when they're needed. And if there's anyone that is struggling, and is interested in reaching out to investigate, put the potential of sitting in ceremony, or just to speak to me directly, I've been through it, so I know what it's like, and I'm willing to have a personal conversation with anyone that wants to, possibly, just start their journey on this path. And so, if it's okay for me just to give I give my personal phone number. So if you want to send me a message, my phone number is 561-401-1154. And you can reach out to me and just send me a text with your name and email, and then I will respond, and we can set up a call. And I just, I love people, and I when I get to serve in this way, it helps me to realize even deeper how every single moment of pain on my path was there on purpose, because I'm getting to utilize it to serve others. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share. May we all be blessed.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for being so available and so open and receptive to support people and what they're navigating and going through. I'll include that in the description of the podcast as well. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it. It helps me continue to host it. And go to wedeepen.com. Check out the upcoming experiences. We'll share about the ATMA experiences as well. And until next time, enjoy. Bye.